Good morning, Aaron here from Honda Pilot Overland. Today we're going to be working to replace a front wheel bearing on the Honda Pilot. It's been loose since my last alignment. I'm going to start by checking the play and seeing if it's gotten worse since my last off-roading adventure, because I'm just curious. In this video you'll also receive some tips for installing the lift kit. I actually am going to be taking my lift spacers off and I'm going to be measuring them because I'm working with a company to possibly build me a custom lift. Okay, let's look at what we're dealing with here. So in order to get the wheel bearing out, you have to disconnect the knuckle to the point that the axle is out of it. And then you basically just use a press with a bolt that goes through the wheel bearing to suck the bolt out and then suck in a new one. I've got the new wheel bearing in the freezer right now. It helps it if it's just even that much smaller from being cold. I will have to contend with the sway bar links since I put my sway bars back on, or my sway bar on the front back on. And in this video I am going to take down my strut so I can measure my strut spacer like I said. So let's see where I want to begin. Definitely I want to begin with hosing this area down, so let's start with that. Alright, we'll see how this footage goes. I think I decided to finally get smart and use my GoPro so you guys can hopefully see what I've got going on in my hands. It's kind of hard to film when you're, in the engine here, or, working on the car. But for these sway bar links, there's an Allen wrench hole on the front. Let's see if I can find the right size key. I definitely saw it move a little bit there. Alright, I think it's just about all the way off now. If you're in this position at home and you've removed, the first nut of your sway bar link, it feels good because these things get stuck. So now, I couldn't get pressure off that link. I'm not sure why this side was hanging down so much farther than the other, but now I'm going to try to lift it up. So now I've lifted the strut up to where there's no pressure on the link here. Before it was, bound, wouldn't really come out, but we got it out. In case you're also wondering why I've got these kind of cheaper style end links on, for the longest time I was actually running without the front sway bar. I have come to the conclusion for two reasons that it's better to keep it on. Obviously handling, but secondarily, without the sway bar on here, without these end links, the droop in the front is much more extreme, which is good for off-roading, but bad for your axles. So I've decided to wheel with the front sway bar links on for right now. In the future, I might pick up a set of extra front axles, and at that point, maybe I'll decide to wheel again with the sway bar links disconnected. But these I just had here at home. I'd probably recommend the Moog end links. I think those are the best on the market, so those are the beefiest and the stoutest. So we got the sway bar end link off now. Let's see what else. I've got a bunch of wires that I've got that are typically fastened with bolts. For one reason or another, the bolts either stripped out, or with my lift, they don't quite reach. So I just zip tie them on with a bunch of zip ties. It's been working for me so far. So I'm gonna end up cutting those. So I've snipped the zip ties. I think for protection, to protect this fuel line and everything, I think I am gonna go ahead and disconnect the caliper here in just a moment. But for right now, what I'm going to do is take out my camber adjustment bolt and my main bolt here that's holding on the knuckle to the strut. And this tool right here, this like vice grip wrench, it is really useful for things like this, because basically you don't need to find the appropriate wrench. It snaps on real nice, and then you can just find the right size socket which in this case 19 millimeters to go with your impact here. And you just zip it right off. Now the bottom, I believe it's a, what is it, a 22. So now I'll just move this guy down to the bottom, tighten it up, capture it. I think this is a good tool to have on yourself or with you. All right, there we go. Both are loose. Getting this camber bolt in and out can be quite the challenge, actually. The way the camber bolt's designed, there's a lobe in it that kind of moves the knuckle as you twist it. But because of its design, it can actually be kind of hard to get it back out. All right. Now I should be able to just push right here and get it out. So that's the lobe I'm talking about, and it basically makes an edge that catches on the inside here. So you just kind of have to twist it and gently hammer, being careful not to mash the threads on the front, but I think we're okay. So I made a slight error here too. Before I undid this knuckle, I definitely should have gotten this bolt loose. Sometimes you even have to have the tire on with the hubcap removed to get this thing loose. I'm gonna go ahead and bend this and try to whack it with my impact here. Cross my fingers I can get it off. All right, so I got that dimpled area pulled back out. Let's see if we can get this, got it come off. Luck was on my side, guys. All right, so I'm gonna continue working on the rotor here, or the caliper here. Actually, he kind of fits right there. Huh, perfect little resting spot for him. Take brake pads, get them out of the way. Again, as always, be really careful with your ABS line here. Oh, all right, looky there. Our knuckle is completely separated here. We can get our first glimpse of the wheel bearing in here. I'm gonna loosen up the bracket here that holds my ABS line up. It's a 10 millimeter socket. All right, so we got more wiggle room, which is good. All right, so the first step to taking off your struts is to pop up these little covers. Looks like I've just about lost my little covers on the other side, but thankfully they're covered by the hood here. As I'm loosening my strut, I can see kind of a perfect storm about to occur where this strut falls down and messes with my axle boot here. So I'm gonna go ahead and just jam this giant piece of foam that I conveniently have. I think with my foam down there, I think I'll be okay as far as it not just straight up falling. That nut is off, but it fell in there, so I didn't actually get it. I'm gonna have to undo these when I go to put them back on, so I'll just keep that as it is. Now, when you're manipulating this strut, you do have to be really careful not to get your axle boot. All right, let's hose that baby off. So since we're mixing how to install a strut with a lift spacer on top of it, let's go ahead and just talk about what you'd have to do if you were in this position with the strut spacer off. You would end up taking your strut spacer, putting it on to where the bolts go through, tightening these nuts, as tight as you can with a wrench. I would definitely recommend putting Loctite on them. There's just no reason not to. And once you get everything on, you basically just have to get it to go back up in the holes. It can be very helpful to have two people working it. The strut will only fit in one way. Oh look, I can grab this nut. Maybe I don't have to take the top piece off. Alright, even though these look symmetrical, they're not symmetrical, and the strut will only fit back up one way. So that kind of helps you out. Again, when you're doing it, make sure you watch out for this axle boot right here, because you will end up tearing it if you're not careful. And I should be able to whack these bracket mounts right off. And with any luck, I think I should be able to get my rotor to come off too. So I hammered on the back of the rotor a little bit. I found out that my hub-centric ring was actually part of the thing holding on my rotor. That's good to know. So let's go ahead and take off the rotor here. Nice. All right, now I need to get myself to the position where I can pull this back off with my slide hammer. So I think for me, for right now, what I'm going to do is work to get that strut back up in there. I might be able to do it with that piece of foam. That piece of foam held it at a pretty good height, so we'll see. I'd say the hardest part about getting this back up in here is just the awkward angle and the amount that it weighs. If you don't get it on the first couple tries, your shoulders will start getting really tired. So we're gonna put it up there. This piece of foam feels like it's gonna be pretty clutch. All right, so I got it up in there. I'm jamming it onto my foam here. Let's see if I can capture a nut up here. Yep, they're in. All right, so what I've done is just kind of pushed up from the bottom. I've got one nut captured here. And I think what I'm going to do is go back and Loctite them. For right now, I'm just getting them hooked on. All right, so now I got my strut suspended up there. I'm gonna get my knuckle put back up. So there's still a lot of movement here that is gonna not be good for when I go to pull this off with the puller. Any bit of movement, wiggle, is gonna reduce your pull capacity or the amount you're hitting it with your slide hammer. I'm gonna take my beloved ratchet straps. I'm gonna find a way to anchor the knuckle right here back against the frame of the car. Slide hammer with the hub pulling adapter on it. We basically just put it on and fasten it. I'm gonna go ahead and put some of these specialty parts in my Amazon affiliate account. It'll be linked below. This slide puller, I can't even tell you how useful it's been. Basically, just think to yourself, how many times have you hit something with a hammer and, you know, broke something loose or anything, you know, like that? Well, this lets you hit in reverse with a hammer. And you might be saying to yourself, yeah, but you have to adapt, you know, you have to have an adapter to hook onto it, which is true. But this slide hammer came with an adapter that allows you to hook on like a vice grip, and so basically anything you can get vice grip jaws on, you can pull, which ends up being a lot of stuff. All right, now this can be one of the more time-consuming parts, and in the past, maybe it was partly because I, you know, didn't think about putting this ratchet strap on. So maybe with that ratchet strap it'll come off faster.
I've almost got it. I at least see it moving. That's always reassuring. Sometimes when you're working on cars, even if you can just see a little bit of improvement, that's an improvement. If you keep doing it, you'll accomplish the goal. Just like that, we got it. Now, this is an important thing to talk about. When I do my wheel bearing replacements, I go ahead and replace the hub. If you don't replace the hub, you've got to get this bearing race back off the hub. And I've looked up some different ways of doing it. You can notch it with an angle grinder, use a chisel, hammer it off. But for me, right now it's just easier to put a new hub in with the new bearing. So, whew, there's that giant Cclip that I was missing. I knew it was in there.
The next step that can give you trouble is this giant Cclip. If you go to your parts store, you're gonna find like this universal Cclip plier thing with adjustable, you know, jaws and whatnot. Thing's not strong enough. So you basically will be really well off getting heavier duty split ring pliers. But these Aries split ring pliers here, these things are legit. So basically get a heavy duty set of split ring pliers and make sure there's nothing holding you back from squeezing it. Looks like there might be on this one. Ooh, this guy's in there good. I might have to get some penetrating oil on that. Well, I gotta maybe take a lunch break or something. All right, so I've been working the Cclip, kind of cleaning it up a little bit. I couldn't find any penetrating lube, so I've been using WD-40. But at this point, what I think I need to do is, or my theory is that when I was pulling out the hub, that maybe it exerted a lot of force on the Cclip. Besides the corrosion, maybe there's, you know, some force that's pushing up against it that's stopping my my Cclip from moving, because it's really in there. So I'm thinking maybe if I let my knuckle back down and I get my my press in here, maybe I can gently take my press and push against the Cclip.
This is the wheel bearing press tool that I bought. It comes with this giant heavy duty bolt and this giant heavy duty socket. I added these washers. They just help it spin a little easier. One really important addition to this kit is to buy this giant deep socket 32 millimeter socket. It just gets tons and tons of purchase on this nut on the end. It really allows you to kind of crank on it. Typically speaking, you don't want to use power tools with these kits. It'll reduce the life of them. I think we all agree though that we tend to do it when we have to. So, and then the inside of the kit here is a bunch of different adapters. I'm actually accidentally mixed up some of my adapters with my bearing press, or my my ball joint press here. But basically it comes with a bunch of these spacers here. So what I'm going to do is try to get a setup here that's going to help me just hopefully just suck in that bearing just a little bit so that my C-clamp gets loose. Alright, so I just had some lunch. We had some time to let this soak. Let's see if we can get the C-clip out now. And I added this little pry bar cheater tube here. Looky there, it's moving. I'm going to try to pry out this one side. These C-clips are a pain, Lenny.
Why don't you tap the one side with like a hammer or something, like so where
you'll see. Got it.
Okay,
See?
there it is, yeah.
Yep. The moment you get it out like that, then you can just take a kind of normal pair of pliers.
Careful so you don't bend it or something.
You're not supposed to use these. Don't ask me if I am or am not going to.
Take a little hammer though.
I'm just gonna use my fingers here. Got a better feel.
Ah, there you go.
Alrighty.
That's a good call.
Success. What we're basically trying to do is get one of these big tubes that's big enough to accept the bearing as it comes out. So we got that. And on the inside now, the tube fits on there. So on the inside now, what we need to do is get one of these spacers that are exactly the right size to fit in there and pull it out. That one's feeling pretty good. So we'll put our washer on there, put it down through. We'll put this assembly here on, washer, giant nut. Now on this one, I'm gonna need to be careful and make sure everything lines up pretty straight once we start tightening this. Oh, where'd my wrench go? Always gotta be careful with this stuff. Yeah, it's small enough. It's just
yeah.
This is just a hard part here. I think what I'm going to do to start with right now is just get a plate that's big enough to just fit on the face here. I'll suck in the bearing until that point, and then we'll move over to this big disc, because this disc might have been on this non-flat surface. It might have been kind of getting pulled around there, if that makes any sense. All right, let's go for part 2 here. Move it forward here. You can see now that this is flush with the plate. This is where I need to move on to my big cupped one. All right, we're getting close though.
There it is.
Yep. Look how cool that is. All right.
You could hear it kind of coming up.
There she is. We did put our bearing in the freezer. That helps it fit in better. What we need to do is find one of these spacers that's the right size to be just exactly the same diameter as the bearing itself. So we'll do this side, and then on the other side we just need it to be big and flat to sit up against this. Now, one of the very important things is that you get this bearing to start going in straight. That's one point of failure that I've seen in the past, is that sometimes it goes a little crooked right at the beginning. I think to start off here, I think I am going to go ahead and use my hand tools here. That way we can make sure it's going in straight. Alright, now that I've got it in that far, I think I'm going to whack it with the ratchet here. Alright, so I believe I have it in there far enough to get the C-clip on. It is very important that you put the C-clip back on and don't press that hub into there yet. And all we have to do is sandwich the front and the back of this one as well. Alright, so I made another mistake here. When you are putting in the hub, you need to press against the inner race of the bearing here. If you do the outside like I did, it actually pushes the inner half of the bearing apart. What I was able to do was just suck in the inner race of the bearing with my press here. Probably a bad idea to roll with it. It feels good right now. Everything feels tight and smooth. I don't hear any grinding or anything. I'm 99% certain that's how they're put together in the factory. The bearing is pressed together. So for right now, I'm going to roll with it. We'll do some test driving before we go to the mountains this weekend. But in the meantime, I basically just pressed it all back together and looks good. So like I said, I'm going to roll with it. All right, my GoPro wasn't recording, so I don't know exactly when it stopped. Then I put the rotor on, and then I put this bracket back on, and now I'm about to put the axle nut back on. You should always use a new axle nut when you, or at least that's what they said. They say you should always use a new axle nut, and I'm guessing it's mostly because of that retainer part kind of gets a crack in it. For right now, I don't have a new axle nut with me, so I'm gonna just use this axle nut for now, and I'll replace it as soon as I get my new axle nut. And torque the axle nut. You can always see kind of where it lines up again, and you can see where I pressed it in last. It's in the pretty much the same spot, so probably won't tighten too much farther than that. Everything's starting to look good. One of the hardest parts of getting everything put back together is actually getting these camber bolts in the right place. The retainer portion of it, I always like to put them so they're facing the exact same way, which for me it's tabbed towards the car, and there's this inner tab that has to go in this place right here on the bracket on the strut. So we're gonna sit here and see if we can push and pry this thing, get that bolt put in. I find it helps to have a nice stout screwdriver sometimes for this part. Alright, so get out the hammer again. Got it in, but that's not the hardest part. The hardest part is you've got to rotate it till you can get this tab to go in the right spot. All right, so I did get it in. So the little inner tab is in the vehicle, or in the bracket there. Got my nut going on right now, and when I go to put these all back together, I always turn the lobe inside so that the top is facing in towards the car. That gives it neutral to negative camber. The way this vehicle is, I'm pretty sure they adjust it pretty much to the max. Inward, negative camber they can, because the lift introduces positive camber, the whole equation. Cool. So our sway bar link, we need to raise it back up. All right, we got our link in. Sometimes when you're putting these links in again, you can actually go without the Allen wrench. We will see. I'll just get it as close as I can. Oh yeah, it's not spinning. And you always want these as tight as you can get them, because otherwise they'll find themselves loose. So I need 2 draw ties there, and then we're just back up to the top, and we got to torque this with the torque wrench. Which actually, I think I can do that without it being on the wheel, because in the back I had to do it with the wheel on because the rotors didn't have slots in the middle. But because this has a slot in the middle, you can put a screwdriver in here and hold it. All right, there we go. Let's see where we ended up. Just a hair past our previous spot there. Take our little hammer here. Good little dimple. Now I just got to get this bracket and then move on to the top nuts. I looked up the torque spec of those too. Those are 43 foot-pounds.
All right, so I gotta back this thing off a lot. I think I'm just gonna bring it all the way back down to 0 again. And again, we're shooting for about 40 foot-pounds of pressure here. There we go. Normally when I do this and I'm installing new struts, especially with my plastic spacers on top, I go ahead and check the torque again in a couple of days, just in case there's some squish factor to that plastic. But all in all, I think that more or less concludes our little adventure today. I'm tempted to just call this how not to replace your wheel bearing and how not to install a strut with a lift spacer, but we'll see. It's my first time filming with the GoPro, so I'm curious to see if it's a benefit or a disadvantage. That concludes another haphazard repair adventure with Aaron Goddard. I don't know which is more exciting, my off-roading or my repairs. You never know what to expect either way, but I think I've got it put back together. I'm going to take it to alignment shop tomorrow. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it aligns well. It normally does. And yeah, it looks like we're well on our way to making it to the mountains this weekend, so stay tuned for that video. We're heading up to Uwharrie National Park, and I'm still trying to talk Lenny into letting me get a winch before the trip, so stay tuned for that update. Might be coming. Thank you for all your support. If you guys want to know some options for giving me more support, you can consider purchasing stuff from my Amazon affiliates account. I'm going to link a bunch of the specialty tools down there. I'm going to put like my Cclip pliers and the polar tool and the wheel bearing press that I have. I'm going to put all those in my store. If you want to go above and beyond and you really like just seeing me take my Pilot and you want to see it last as long as possible, consider looking me up on Patreon. Those subscriptions really help me out. And in the meantime, if you like and share, that'll help me out as well. So thank you so much, you guys. The channel's really growing and I'm having fun along the way, so that's what counts. Catch you guys next time.